Yeah.
Somebody who is working in India with a team experience of 2 years, what makes them go abroad in internal movement? क्या
Yeah.
होता है, क्या फैक्टर्स प्ले
या
करते हैं?
एक ऑब्वियसली स्किल सेट होता है एंड
हम्म।
दूसरा
तो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक में अगर जैसे आपने बहुत सारे हायरिंग्स किए हैं, इन इंटरव्यूज व्हाट मेजर मिस्टेक्स पीपल डू?
major mistakes is I would start with the CV. I mean, many people write many things in their CV.
अपार्ट फ्रॉम द टेक्निकल स्किल सेट, और क्या चीज़ें आइडियली इंटरव्यूअर देखता है? 3-4 थिंग्स। एक और पॉइंट, जैसे आपने ऑपरेशंस में भी काम किया, बहुत सारे लोगों को, जो हमारे स्टूडेंट भी है, CFA करता है फर्म, उनको ऐसा लगता है ऑपरेशंस नहीं करना है, हमको कोर रिस्क में जाना है। तो एनी पॉइंट्स फॉर दैट? जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ आई एम वर्किंग, आई हैव बीन वर्किंग फॉर लाइक 4-5 years in investment banking now, and I want to get visibility in the organization to get promotion. How should I do? Hello guys, hi, this is Ganesh Naik. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career. And as a part of that journey, I have started with podcast with industry veterans. And today we have with us Siddharth sir. He's going to be talking about his journey in the industry, his experience, what skill sets people need in the industry, and many more things. So Siddharth sir, thank you very much for joining in. For the audience, if you can give a brief, आप एक brief बता दोगे, that would be very helpful.
First of all, thank you, Ganesh. I mean, for inviting and having this session. So for me, I started with a CA firm called Haribhakti and Company in Mumbai.
Right.
And then from there on, post completion of CA, I continued with them for a couple of years. And then from there on, I moved to mutual fund industry. So at that point in time, it was ING Mutual Fund. I mean, later on, it became ING Vaishya Mutual Fund. But till the time I was working there, it was ING Mutual Fund. And from there on, I moved to Morgan Stanley. With Morgan Stanley, I had varied roles within a mutual fund, and then once the business was sold off, I moved on the offshore side, and from there on, I moved to another uh, mutual fund industry new player, which was Trust Asset Management. And currently, I am with a new startup, which is 2 year old. It's a hedge fund. It's a globally managed fund investing only in emerging markets. So that's how it has been. And all throughout, I've been working within operations, investor servicing, handling back office, accounting.
Okay.
So right throughout, that's how my journey has been.
वंडरफुल। तो सर, अगर आपको इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक में ज्वाइन करना है किसी को, ओके, फॉर एग्जांपल कोई कॉलेज का स्टूडेंट है या कोई रिटेल बैंक में काम कर रहा है, क्या चीजें ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए बिफोर यू गो फॉर द इंटरव्यू?
See, generally, I mean, कैसा होता है for, and that is true for any student now. I mean, they would beforehand decide the role in which they want to go. So, for
Right.
example, suppose if as a student he or she is pursuing, say, a CFA, then they would have something in mind that they would want to join, say, equity team
Right.
on the research side, or they want to manage a fund that is on the investment side. So, typically, I would say most students, and they are pretty clear in terms of what is the role which they are planning to go in once they clear the exams. And
Right.
this is true not only for CFA, for any stream, I would say. I mean, currently the maturity level is quite high in terms of where they want to be, which sector, which area, which function, and all of those. So students, broadly, I think so. I mean, I may be wrong, but broadly, I think so. They know as to where they are stepping in,
Right.
what sort of roles they are getting into, and what is it the end role or the end where they are going to reach up the ladder.
सो आप बोल रहे हो कि आप कैंडिडेट को ये पता होना चाहिए कि ब्रॉडली कहाँ जाना है,
हाँ.
बट चैलेंज क्या होता है सर कि आप इंडस्ट्री में देखते हो, मतलब जो यंग बच्चे हैं उनको इंटरेक्ट करने नहीं मिलता है,
Yeah.
सो दे ट्राई टू रीच आउट थ्रू लिंक्डइन एंड ऑल। तो वो कैसे करें, मतलब कि आपको पता चले कि इस कंपनी में टीम्स हैं क्या, कौन सी रोल्स हैं, स्टार्ट में उनको नहीं पता होता है वो।
Yeah.
तो शुड दे जॉइन डायरेक्टली एंड देन एक्सप्लोर?
नहीं, वो मेरे हिसाब से थोड़ा गलत आइडिया होगा। सी आई मीन, आज के दिन में अगर हम देखेंगे तो काफी सारा चीज अवेलेबल है ऑनलाइन। I mean, for example, suppose if a person wants to join a company A, so there is a lot of information which is available already on the website, on various social media, through the company's own website in terms of in which business they are, what are they doing. So if we talk about global investment banks, and most of the banks have their captive units in India.
Right.
Maybe 20 years they were not there. I mean, the growth has been phenomenal.
Right.
So at that point in time, maybe students or whoever was joining was not aware in terms of what are the functions which the company is performing out of India, or which are the roles which the company is offering. But today, I would say more or less people or whoever is joining know in terms of what is it that the company is offering.
Right.
Yeah. Then it is a matter of whether I am going in for the brand or I am going in for the role. So I mean, I've seen a lot of people joining in roles which they like, and brand for them doesn't matter. By brand, I mean bigger investment
banks. They start with boutique.
Yeah, be it say JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, or earlier it was CS, now it is UBS, those sort of banks. But they are happy doing what they like. Like for example, if they like something in risk, they don't mind joining a smaller bank or a smaller company where they are able to meet what they are looking
the role
for.
side.
Yes,
right.
on the role side.
Okay.
And there are students who go in for brands, and then I mean, there, as you mentioned earlier, maybe their objective is let us join. Maybe we'll figure out, and ultimately maybe we'll reach to the role in which we plan to.
Got it. अब सपोज जैसे किसी ने ज्वाइन कर लिया बड़ा इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक, मॉर्गन हो गया या सीएस हो गया, उनको फर्स्ट ईयर में क्या करना चाहिए आपके हिसाब से? फर्स्ट इनिशियल ईयर में क्या फोकस करना चाहिए अपने काम में?
काम ऑब्वियसली, आई मीन फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट इज जो आप काम के लिए ज्वाइन हुए वो होना ही चाहिए, मतलब वो नियर टू परफेक्ट बोलो, जो परफेक्ट, उसमें कोई कमी नहीं आनी चाहिए. एंड ऑब्वियसली इफ यू आर न्यू तो वो लर्निंग फेज चालू रहना चाहिए. एंड लर्निंग इज नॉट नेसेसरली फॉर न्यू, आई मीन एवरी डे इज अ लर्निंग फॉर एवरीवन. सो ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि हाँ मेरे को सब आता है या मुझे सब पता है, एंड देन यू लूज ऑन, एंड देन वो जो एक हंगर होता है कि मुझे आना चाहिए, या एंड देन धीरे धीरे देन ऑब्वियसली यू स्टार्ट नेटवर्किंग विद इन द टीम, आउटसाइड ऑफ द टीम. बिकॉज आई हैव सीन बड़े बैंक्स या बड़े ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में नेटवर्किंग हेल्प्स अ लॉट. I mean, a small example might be, suppose your stakeholder is someone who is sitting outside of India.
Right.
And if you are good in your work, if you are dynamic enough, that person may like, and if something comes up, he might as well recommend you. So those are the things which may open up. But to start off with, as you mentioned, I mean, the first and foremost focus should be जो मैं करने आया हूँ या जो मुझे काम दिया गया है वो मैं अच्छे से कर रहा हूँ.
Right.
और बराबर कर रहा हूँ, टाइमली कर रहा हूँ, जैसा एक्सपेक्टेशन है वैसे कर रहा हूँ. नहीं तो क्या होगा कि मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है मैं नेटवर्किंग करूँ और फिर काम में ध्यान नहीं है, तो देन then it goes in a different direction.
So you need to also take out time apart from the work, मतलब obviously manage करके कि एडिशनली मैं जैसे नेटवर्किंग एक तरीका
नेटवर्किंग हो गया, स्किल डेवलपमेंट हो गया. और बहुत सारे फॉर्म मतलब दे हेल्प द कैंडिडेट, स्टूडेंट्स बोलो या whoever is joiner, in terms of upgrading their skill sets.
Right.
या कहीं कहीं होता है कि आपको कोई रोल दिया गया है लेकिन वो स्किल सेट नहीं है, बट दे देन ट्रेन यू टू मैच योर स्किल सेट विद द रोल. वो सब भी होता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं होता है. मतलब nowadays organizations invest a lot on the training development side.
Right.
There are, I mean, big units within like HR.
They have their own learning portal also.
हाँ, और जैसा आपने बताया कि नेटवर्किंग हो गया, फिर जैसे सपोज मैं ज्वाइन किया एज अ रिकंसिलिएशन टीम मेंबर, लेकिन मुझे पता नहीं और कौन से टीम्स है, तो देन ऑब्वियसली लंच ब्रेक होता है, ये होता है, दूसरे टीम मेंबर्स मिलते हैं, जानिए क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा है, आपका टीम क्या करता है, कैसे काम होता है, देन ट्राई गेट अ व्यू इन टर्म्स ऑफ कौन सा काम और हो रहा है.
Right.
And then obviously then as you get to know more, फिर आपका अगर इंटरेस्ट कहीं होता है, then obviously you need to try and see whether you are able to join, आपका स्किल सेट उससे मैच हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा है. All of those things matter, I mean.
Right. तो इंटरनल मोबिलिटी भी बाद में आप लेके मूव कर सकते.
Yeah, most or bigger organizations have a time frame of like 15 to 18 months,
right,
post which you can apply for a mobility, and it may vary from entity to entity, but mostly that's the norm. I mean, a person needs to spend at least 15 to 18 months in that role.
Right.
And post that, again, most of the organizations have their internal job portal. So people can just start, look up the role which they like or which they are interested in, and then can start applying. Right. And this applies for overseas placements also. So it is not necessarily we are talking only about within India or within the same role or within the same teams, or so it is like sort of, if you're joining a global organization, then even the roles are global. I mean, if there is a role your skill set match, the hiring manager likes you, then you are all set. You can even travel to
So
overseas. Yeah.
somebody who is working in India with a team experience of 2 years, what makes them go abroad? In internal movement, क्या
Yeah.
होता है? क्या factors play
या
करते हैं?
एक ऑब्वियसली स्किल सेट होता है एंड
हम्म,
दूसरा आई मीन देन द अदर थिंग्स व्हिच माइट कम अप इज ऑन द सॉफ्टर स्किल साइड लाइक हाउ इज योर कम्युनिकेशन योर प्रेजेंटेशन स्किल्स
okay.
जो बाकी स्किल्स होते हैं बीट इंटीग्रिटी कम्युनिकेशन योर प्रेजेंटेशन स्टाइल योर वर्किंग स्टाइल योर I mean, if you get exposed to team, then your team management style,
Right.
all of those factors come, and
Okay.
then again, if the global manager is interested in hiring that person, he or she will definitely check with the managers, with your peers, in terms of how the person is, how is he performing, and all of those factors.
Right.
And then obviously, if all of those things match, then the mobility becomes easier. It's not that, I mean, if this doesn't match or if you don't know the manager, then it won't happen. It is just that it facilitates, it's sort of an easy transition as compared to
Because
entering
you have a
into
track record, आपने
yes,
already
yes,
perform किया
yes,
है,
yes,
तो it helps
yeah,
directly.
yeah,
But internal mobility globally होती है
yeah, yeah,
investment
yeah,
banks.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, reason I explicitly asked because बहुत सारे जो young बच्चे
Student,
जाते
yeah,
हैं या 2 साल के एक्सपीरियंस के साथ है, they always have this query कि मैं मुझे बाहर जाना है.
हाँ.
तो होता है क्या इसमें मतलब?
Yes, 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 होता है. In fact, I have seen many people joining in bigger organizations with an objective to go overseas because
अच्छा.
maybe through their friends or through their network they come to know that there is a job portal. Once you spend a particular time in the team, you can apply to any job.
Right.
So they know all of that, and then maybe they come with an objective that they just need to spend like that particular time in India, and then maybe apply for overseas job.
राइट. अभी मेरे सारे क्वेश्चन इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग के, देन आई विल मूव टू फंड मैनेजमेंट.
Yeah, yeah.
तो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक में अगर जैसे आपने बहुत सारे हायरिंग्स किए हैं, इन इंटरव्यूज व्हाट मेजर मिस्टेक्स पीपल डू?
The major mistakes is I would start with the CV. I mean, many people write many things in their CV, but if a particular question is asked, they're not able to answer in terms of. So, for example, suppose I may say I'm a team manager or I'm good at problem solving, but if the interviewer asks, give me one example of how you have solved a problem, what was the problem, or if the interviewer throws a new problem and just tries and gets a perspective, then the person may or may not be able to answer if he or she has not gone. Yeah. So, I mean, that is, I would say, the first point.
Okay.
And then obviously, the other mistakes is you are not, the JD is rolled out, but you have not gone through the JD. You don't know what role you are applying for.
Right.
Maybe you have just looked at the brand. You just want to join any which way,
Okay.
whichever role is offered.
So you have seen people doing that without reading the job description. They're coming.
Without reading, or maybe they were doing role A, but here it is role D, which is like completely different. But still, they want to join because it's a bigger organization, it's a bigger brand, and again, ultimately, they know that maybe after a point in time they can move to switch to other teams. Or,
right. So these two primary mistakes.
Yeah, these are primary, and then obviously as the interview goes, maybe so at times we have and this is very specific for freshers. And when we used to do the campus interviews, we've seen people like when we used to ask like what's the basics of accounting, they were not able to answer, or what's in corporate action. So something which you have studied in college. Obviously, we know that they won't have any experience, or but and we would start with what's your favorite subject. So suppose if the person says I love accounting or I love auditing, and if you ask a particular question from their favorite subject, still they are not able to answer, then it puts sort of a question mark in terms of what are we trying to hire, or what is it that. And at times, I mean, we have also seen people with good attitude and good approach, even though they may not be able to answer all the questions in the whatever has been asked, but still they go through because maybe their presentation, their approach, they reflect that sort of a hunger.
इसी का कंटिन्यूएशन में मैं एक आपको सवाल पूछता हूँ कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम द टेक्निकल स्किल सेट और क्या चीजें आइडियली इंटरव्यूअर देखता है? 3-4 थिंग्स.
मतलब उसमें बहुत सारे है, राइट फ्रॉम लाइक suppose if you are asked to report at 9, what time have you reported?
अच्छा.
And suppose if you are late, whether you are intimated, it can be due to any reason. And we are not saying it can happen to both interviewer or the interviewee as well.
बराबर.
But how have you approached, whether you're intimated, not intimated, if you're on time, then how are you presenting yourself, whether you are neatly dressed, neatly combed, depending on the interview level, whether you are dressed as per that. Like if it is for a senior
Senior
role,
level.
then obviously you expect a jacket or a suit or a coat, whatever, depending on the seniority. So well, I mean those are, I mean, the first impression what you get, and then how well prepared are you for the interview? I mean, how interested are you for the interview? I mean, is it just by the way I've come for the interview, or you are really interested in the role
Okay.
or the company? How much homework have you done for the role, for the company? I mean, what the company does, whether you have done that sort of homework. And
Okay.
I mean, typically the interviewer may just try and check to get a sense as to does the interviewee know in what territory is he or she entering. He may just
Okay.
check. He or
Okay.
she may just check. So those are the factors which go then in an interview. And again, I mean, there is no right or wrong answer, but it is just that how you carry yourself throughout the interview.
Okay. So with respect to the point that you mentioned कि जॉब रोल क्या है या कंपनी क्या है, सो ये इंटरव्यू में स्पेसिफिसिटी पूछा जाता है, जैसे आप लोग पूछते भी है कि कंपनी क्या करती है
Yeah.
या उसका बिजनेस क्या है, सो ये भी एक टेस्ट होता है
हाँ,
डायरेक्टली.
होता है, and that's what nowadays the interviewer expects them, the candidates would know.
अच्छा.
They expect, because there's so much available on the social media or wherever. Maybe 20 years it was
Not easily
not easily available. It was available, maybe not easily available. Or maybe 30 years back it was not available. So maybe the interviewer would ask,
Right.
क्या करते हो, क्या नहीं करते हो, and all of this. But
सो फॉर द ऑडियंस, आई मीन ऑब्वियसली आपको फंक्शनल नॉलेज तो पता होना ही चाहिए, प्लस आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि कंपनी क्या कर रही है, व्हाट इज देयर बिजनेस, हाउ दे आर जनरेटिंग रेवेन्यू. जितनी क्लैरिटी आपको होगी उतना ही
हाँ, मतलब
they
it
will
will
be
help, it
happy.
will facilitate your मतलब that will become so much more easier. Maybe when typically most interviewers would ask, what would you like to know? So maybe you would be able to ask relevant questions that would make good impression on the interviewer.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just saying, because you know you have studied, so maybe you will be able to ask, oh, okay, so you have a captive unit, which are the functions which you perform here? Maybe because that functional description or the categorization is not given.
Yes.
Maybe the interviewee knows that there is a captive unit, but which are the functions? Or maybe he or she may know only operations, but there are varied functions which are being performed.
Okay. एक और पॉइंट, जैसे आपने ऑपरेशंस में भी काम किया है, बहुत सारे लोगों को, अच्छा, जो हमारे स्टूडेंट भी है, CFA करता है फार्म, उनको ऐसा लगता है ऑपरेशंस नहीं करना है, हमको कोर रिस्क में जाना है. तो एनी पॉइंट्स फॉर देम?
नहीं, अगेन इट्स अ मैटर ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये खराब है या ये है. मतलब इन वे आप अगर होलिस्टिकली देखोगे तो ऑपरेशंस इज सॉर्ट ऑफ अ फुलक्रम टू द एंटायर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. आई मीन
एवरीबॉडी इंटरेक्ट्स टू दैट.
हाँ, आई एम टॉकिंग वेरी स्पेसिफिकली फॉर द फंड मैनेजमेंट इंडस्ट्री, wherein because at one end you are handling investors data, investors money, on the second hand you are interacting with the investment team. So this money comes in and this is being invested on behalf of those investors, so you are in between managing that entire process. Then the other end is compliance, ensuring that whatever is mandated as per the regulators is being followed. Then
So operation takes care of all
within
of
the
this.
function, then again there is a risk function, because anything and everything you talk about is a risk. Like
Right.
whether you do say a simple, you may say it's a cash forecasting, तो क्या है उसमें बड़ा बात क्या है? लेकिन you can't over forecast, you can't under forecast, you can't assume anything unless you have cited or unless you have made the payment, all of those things. So these are basics, but someone may feel, if he or she is not interested, then they may feel, no, this is, I mean, the reason why it is called back office is because it is sort of end of all the, I mean, starts from front office and then it is sort of the end of the function.
Major thing that I think so a lot of people feel is that it's a mundane work.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. That ideally things, I think
Mundane,
so.
repetitive.
Repetitive. There's no growth.
Yeah.
So is it true?
I mean, true, again, there's no right or wrong answer, but again, depending on the organization. So, for example, suppose if the organization is growing, like your AUM is like say 100, moves to 1,000, then 5,000. So obviously, if there is a AUM growth, the division will also grow. So once the division grows, you will also get a growth, right?
Okay.
But assume the AUM has stagnated or something has stagnated, then a person may feel that there is no growth, right? And one always sees growth as sort of a lateral movement, whereas most bigger banks, they also look at, you can move laterally, like from say operations to a non-operations role, and then from there on you can move to a different career path. So that is also a growth, because you have moved out of from say an operations to say a front office. But there again, you may be at the starting level. But at least you have switched from say operations role to a fund management role, or or vice versa. Maybe a person is not able to cope up or doesn't like say a equity research sort of a role. He or she may think that no, this is not my cup of tea. Maybe I need to look at different role, and maybe say a compliance, operations, whatever the person is interested in, they can start looking at those sort of. But yes, you're right. I mean, the first impression, see, typically, okay. I mean, if we take a step back, the first and foremost thing, if I am pursuing say a CFA or a FRM or something similar of this level, then my first impression would be that I need to go at a role which is more front office, right? Only if I don't fit or I don't get that sort of a role is where maybe I'll start looking at mid office, back office, or those sort of roles. Maybe. But the first object is always, I mean, that will be true for anyone, I would say. Even if say a person has done CA, and if he or she is aware of the functions or whatever, then he or she may first try in for a fund management sort of a role, where they would manage funds for someone else, or sort of do equity research, or on the sell side where they are selling ideas or products, or on the product management side, or on the risk management side. Because that is obviously, I mean, in the longer run, it is more lucrative, and as you mentioned, it is more, maybe more growth oriented, more, it gives you more visibility, right? So for example, you may know the fund manager's name for all, I mean, across the industry, but you may not know who's in ops or who's doing what in ops.
Visibility is also one thing that attracts people.
Yes, obviously. And that's the nature of the industry, I would say, and of the role as well.
But this is what you're talking from the fund management perspective. लेकिन जो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक में जो कोर आईबी के रोल्स होते हैं, जो फ्रंट ऑफिस में, वहां पे फ्रंट ऑफिस के रोल्स के लिए कैसे हायरिंग होती है?
वहां पे भी, I mean, typically what I've noticed is they would first and foremost is they would have hiring that I will take only say a sort of a CFA or a IM grad. So that's the starting point. I mean, or say
that is a bare minimum.
Bare minimum. I mean, if you don't, I mean, if you're not qualified for that, then you are not even allowed to sort of go for the interview or whatever. You are not, you're not qualified for anything else. So that's the starting point, and from there on, obviously it is all how well you present yourself, how are you, I mean, what role you are applying. Then it is all multitude of factors which go into. So front office, obviously, I mean, I've seen roles which are only offered to IM grads or say a CFA or those sort of roles. So even if the person is say a CA or CS, or maybe he's having multiple degrees, but not say a CFA or anything which is globally recognized, she may not be qualifying for that interview.
Okay. Just say, for example, if I've been working for like 4 or 5 years in investment banking now, and I want to get visibility in the organization to get promotions and all. How should I do?
उसमें मतलब वही है, there is no right or wrong answer. उसमें, as I mentioned, I mean, networking becomes important.
Okay.
Then I mean, what promotion is, again, whether you are looking for sort of next level within, then obviously there, I mean, if you are just looking within the division, then your manager needs to be I mean, he or she needs to become your sponsor. I mean, he or she needs to be happy with your role, and then on your side, then you need to see that whether I am meeting the expectations which is set for this role, and whether I am prepared for the next role. So, for example, suppose if a person moves from, I am saying designation wise, from A to B, then whatever that role B demands, whether you are equipped, I mean, from your perspective, in terms of knowledge, experience, skill set, whether you are equipped for that. If you think you are, then obviously you need to push your case as well to your manager that I think I am prepared for this. If not, then you let me know which are the areas I need to work on. And then, I mean, that is the conversation which they need to have with their managers. Unless and until their managers are convinced about them, they won't be put up for promotion. That's very clear. So, for example, if I need to go to the next level, my manager has to be convinced that this person is good enough for the next role, and then only will it proceed.
So one of the important factors is your manager, basically, where
immediate manager, and then obviously manager's manager, whether you get an opportunity to interact with them. And most bigger organizations would have a skip level. So I mean, you need to have that sort of skip level meetings where you're meeting your manager's manager. So you need to follow that. I mean, diligently do whatever is required for that meeting. Prepare yourself. It should not be a waste of time that he or she has just come like that for the meeting, not prepared. Ask the right questions, and those sort of things. And again, more importantly, regularly have your one-on-ones with your immediate manager. That's that again depends on your manager style as well. So some managers I've seen are very informal. I mean, they don't need sort of a formal one-to-one, but at least they need to know what is happening within them. So maybe if you're gone with them for a tea break or a lunch break, maybe they will just ask you update, or if there's something which has happened immediately, maybe you just pick up the phone, call them, inform them, and then document it. But I mean, some may be very informal, some may like it only on email. So that person will come to know only once he or she starts working. What's the manager's style of working? Whether he or she is informal, or whether they like everything formally, or whatever. So if it is very formal, then maybe you send a mail and then call. If it is informal, you call and then you send an email. So it all depends on
what type of your manager is.
Yeah.
But now, when you're working with these big organizations for new people also, what precautions you need to take care when you're working with international people, or your manager is sitting in US or UK or Japan? So what precautions you need to take care, ideally from your thought process?
One obviously is whatever you are doing, you need to be thorough. What are the points you need to discuss with your manager? You need to be, I mean, on top of it. It can't be, or to put it other way, if there's something which has come up, which maybe you are not prepared, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, then you need to make sure that you're closing that loop. You're taking notes of it.
I wanted to understand from the cultural perspective.
So culturally, again, I mean, that rapport needs to be developed. So, I mean, I have seen, like, for example, if your manager is in, say, US, at times manager, and if you are working, say, the general shift 9 to 6, so few of the managers are very accommodative in terms of they will come in early for your catch up or whatever. And some managers may say, no, I mean, on that particular day you work late, but maybe you come in late. So that sort of flexibility is provided. But at the same time, I mean, whenever you are interacting with your global managers, you need to make sure that you are representing your India office, your India organization. So you need to make sure that you don't do something which negates or brings anything negative for the team or for the organization as well.
Okay, wonderful. Any one piece of advice that you would like to give to new people who want to join either the fund management or the investment banking?
So again, I mean, as I mentioned, it is all dependent on the interest. For example, say I intrinsically believe that I am a risk sort of a person. I like risk. And then if I'm told you join operation, then maybe I will join. Maybe the job is lucrative, it gives me a good offer, the band is good. Maybe I will join. But maybe I may not be happy. So, I mean, and there are times where you may not get what you like. But then you need to work out. So maybe then at least whenever a person is joining, he or she needs to be mentally prepared that okay, this is fine. This is just a transition phase. Maybe I'll go, or maybe I'll develop interest in this as I move on. And maybe I can give a new perspective to whatever we are doing. Maybe we can add automation, whatever. I mean, whatever the person is doing. So there are a number of things which can be done, because anyone joining in comes with a fresh pair of eyes, with his or her own experience. So they can add to the process. It's not that anything and everything which is done is perfect or
Right.
can't be improved. There's always scope for improvement.
So it might also be the situation like you might not get your best team.
Yeah.
You start
Best role.
best
Yeah,
role,
role,
in fact.
yeah.
So you start somewhere else,
Yeah.
and then you gradually move towards that role internally.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you very much, Siddharth sir,
Thank
for
you.
taking out time and talking to us and giving us the perspective with respect to how interviews would happen, what are the red flags, how you should manage your career within an investment bank or a fund management industry.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, before we close, just one piece. I mean, because you mentioned interviews, I mean, a lot of times what I have personally noticed, there are two misconceptions, which maybe if I make a mention, maybe it will help the students or whoever is joining. One is most bigger banks or investment banks, whenever a person is joining, the designation or the role which is given is called as analyst.
Yes.
So, for example, if the student or the person doesn't know, he or she may think or thinks generally that this role is within research, equity research, because I mean, typically with the Indian management firm, fund management, the word analyst is associated with research. So they start thinking that they are joining a research sort of a role, and suddenly once they join, they find themselves in say ops or some support sort of role, is where the discontentment starts. So that is one thing which maybe before joining, if they clarify that even the designation is analyst, what is the job description or what's the job role. The second thing is what I've noticed or I've seen is a lot of people, I mean, most organizations now go to campus, and this I'm talking very specifically for the graduates, because they're taking directly from the graduate colleges. Like the graduates are joining in the investment banks.
Right.
So at the time of interview or at the time of shortlisting, the candidate doesn't know which role he or she is joining, because I mean, the practical thing is the way this works is maybe the capacity is for say 30 candidates. The firm will go out, they will select 30 candidates, and then after that pool is selected, maybe they will shortlist 35 for 2 or 3 or 5% dropouts or whatever, and then once that lot is selected is when the allocation will happen. So for example, say 4 of us are managers. I am from derivatives team, you are from investment operations team, someone is from someone else team. Then that allocation will happen. So it's quite possible that the student might have thought or might have been interviewed by a person who was in derivatives team, but he may land up in investment management operations or some other role.
Right.
Because that allocation happens later on. And most organizations tell them upfront that the role will get allocated once you join.
Right.
I mean, the students need to be aware of that and had to be mentally open to whatever role they get into. It shouldn't be that, I mean, from day one, if that discontentment starts, then obviously that person is not going to be happy with the role which is being offered.
So these are generally the management programs.
No, not the management. The campus hires.
Okay.
The campus hires directly. So typically, what most organizations have started is they would start with right from second year of graduation, they would have interns. So once shortlisted, those interns would work for 3 months, 3 to 4 months within the organization. And if they are, I mean, if their performance is good, if they're liked by the teams, they are straight away confirmed once they once they are clearing their graduation, they are they are offered a role in the organization. And the second is where you are taken from the pool and post graduation. I mean, post
completion of the graduation, they will be joining.
Yes.
But they are not aware which team they will be joining. So that
which team, what sort of role, those are the things which they have to be mindful of.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Taking your time, and keep watching our next podcast also. Thank you.